So I've just about stopped clogging up the works with all those videos I keep uploading. So I just thought, well, I got to keep the momentum of clogging the works up going. So I just thought I would say something a bit more about those neighbours those neighbours at that place from the Mushies gang detecting a meth lab video in 2006. So it was a bit more backstory. And it's not a backstory that's particularly relevant to the whole meth lab, not directly anyway, but I actually had met that couple before because I used to live downstairs there with my boyfriend, who was not the boyfriend that I went to visit the upstairs neighbour with. It's a long story. There were the new boyfriend that I went to visit with was connected to the social group of the couple who was living upstairs there, but actually I was living downstairs with the brother of one of the couple who lived upstairs, who we went to, and anyway, when he and I broke up, he moved out, but I had to stay on by myself for a bit because I was going through university exams at the time, and it just was just the wrong time for me, so I just sort of stayed on, and then later on we moved everything together properly, and I won't say it was the most harmonious breakup, but we kind of pulled together to kind of make shit happen, which was fairly good, but I was on reasonable terms with his mum. I mean, his family never liked me, but, she was one of those sort of gregarious types who, I don't know, like she was quite kind to me, in some ways, in some ways, definitely kind. One thing was really hurtful is that they had like a very, very sociable family, like loads and loads of friends, all of them like a whole, and I was just like the kind of the cold fish. And I know now that it's not really that I was a cold fish, it's just that I didn't show affection in the way that that family showed affection. And now I know it's because I'm an Aspie and I wasn't, like the affection that I grew up with in my household wasn't like his affection was growing up in his household. And I think, yeah, whatever, like, it did really hurt my feelings that no one ever put my photo up on the corkboard, whereas they had a massive corkboard in their kitchen, which was the hearth of the home, because they were entertainers and all of that, and there were ex-girlfriends of his that were up there, which was totally fine by me. Like I'm not jealous like that. It's like, there were, like sometimes families really, embrace a girlfriend or a boyfriend of one of their kids, and there's nothing fucking wrong with that, and just because the son or daughter, just because their kid breaks up with somebody, doesn't mean that the family has to, and in this case they hadn't, and that's totally fine. But no one ever put a photo of me up on that board. It sort of makes me feel like crying a wee bit now. It's not because of them, it's just, like 20 years later, it's just sort of like, no, it's just how people are, how people feel about me, I suppose. Anyway, he did, he wasn't a very nice guy, to be honest, but, like, he was, like, decent enough to me as a boyfriend. He was a fucking asshole, and he wasn't my boyfriend anymore, but, he was just, like, my pa, why isn't there a picture of Caitlin there? And then he put a photo of me up there. And then I went back there another time, and like my photo had been kind of like covered up by something else, and it's like, fuck, like I think their mum was like really two-faced actually, and I don't think that her superficial acceptance of me was genuine. I think that she was just one of those people who just puts, just people like that, and it's a lot of people, but it's just not cool, and it's just not cool. Like, just put a picture up of me. Just put a picture up of me. Like, your corkboard is fucking enormous, man. It takes up most of the wall in your fucking kitchen. Like, don't be a dick about it. But anyway, whatever. Like, she and I kind of cooperated quite well when it came to, really, to be honest, I was probably being better than she was. It wasn't in my interest, really, in the middle of what I was going through, exams, breakup, moving, picking to move, to really sort of see prospective new tenants through. But did I mention the fact that his parents owned the place? I can't remember. Anyway, I hope that's clear. Anyway, so we were showing tenants through, and so I would always be the host, and I'd be kind of magnanimous as well. Anyway, so this couple came through, and anyway, the mum of my boyfriend, and later on the chick who lived upstairs with her boyfriend after they come back from London. So she selected this couple, and the chick was a bit of a cold fish, and the guy was quite nice, like he's a blokey guy. I guess they were both kind of like bogan adjacent. And anyway, as a kind of a courtesy, I suppose, they invited me to their flat warming, and I turned up, and I turned up to the flat warming, and it was a modest sort of deal. And this, to be clear, is where the meth lab ended up being set up. And I found she was quite beautiful. She looked a little bit like what's her name from Blade Runner? Fucking hell. Jesus Christ. My memory is just so bad, but Rachel. She looks better here, but just not as, not as well sort of facially put together, but kind of had a bit of that kind of look. So, quite attractive without being stunning, I suppose. And he was like quite a short guy, but all blokey, and he did a lot of I don't know if it's motocross, to be fair. Probably not motocross, but he did a lot of like. I remember him just telling me about these time trials. Like, he wasn't professional, but he and his group or whatever, like, they do a lot of time trials around. In my mind, I'm thinking about Makara Valley, but Inahari Valley, but I don't necessarily think that. But in Wellington, like, when you're like, there are just so many hills, and so the roads that have been cut through the hills are very windy and they're very narrow, and they'll put centre lines through essentially what is a single lane road, which is pretty crazy, because when you go through those rural roads, you go for a nice Sunday drive, but you're going to find a fucking boy racer who's got very good handling, but still doesn't it's all very well to have very good handling to stay in the centre line, but you've got to realise that the centre line's just taking the piss. Like it's like pretending that there's a centre line where two cars can pass, but there's not. There's not. You cannot have two cars passing. So you've got to like take each corner very, very carefully. You've got to do defensive driving like you never do defensive driving anywhere else, right? And so I was talking to this guy, just listening to his story, and he was telling me about how he had one of his riding group or whatever. I don't know what the fuck they're called, but they have serious bikes. They don't there's no fucking Harley Davidsons here. These are well, I don't want to be a dick and say Ducati. Like that's just a bit silly. I don't think that's I don't think Ducati do racing bikes as such, but you know what I mean. Like these are not showboats. These are serious fucking races. And quite often they or whatever, like I'm not gonna fucking start to talk about fucking motorbikes, but whatever, these are people who are very, very serious about riding. Anyway, what happened was their crew or group or whatever the fuck they're called, they rounded a corner and one of them, the one in the front runner I guess, went straight through the windscreen of a van of like female netball players on their way to a game. Or they were like they were doing an away game, and from what I remember, like literally everyone in that netball van died. And horrifically, mutilated bodies everywhere. And as for the cyclist who went by, the cyclist, sorry, that's not incorrect, but it's not quite accurate, colloquially. Obviously, first responders often get. It's not uncommon for them to get PTSD because of what they see as just like these people are just they basically have just gone through a fucking mulcher. And so this guy was just saying how I can't remember all the details. To be perfectly frank, and I wasn't perfectly frank with him, I was more sympathetic, but those guys should not have been doing that. You do not do time trials on a public road. Don't do that. Don't do that. That is just so not fucking cool. But anyway, he was quite traumatised by it, and he had seen fucking shit. He had seen fucking shit that day, but he was okay in that moment too, after going through whatever he needed to go through with the authorities who arrived, like ambulance and all that stuff. He was okay enough to get on his bike and sort of toddle home. But and so I was like, whoa, my attention was really rapt, and I was like, shit, that introduced me to the concept of, a lot of people don't think, and especially a lot of young people don't think, and especially a lot of young men don't think, when you have a car accident and you die, you don't just pass away. You're probably chopped into 5 pieces, and those 5 pieces are not going to be anywhere near each other, and it's probably going to take emergency services probably a couple of days to find all of you, and guts and all that kind of stuff. The concept and the reality are very, it's, car wrecks are not, oh, she had a concussion and it was just too much of a concussion, and you are just fucking scrambled eggs, and that was my first really cognizant introduction to what happens when you have a fucking varies, when you have a car wreck, like a serious, like, and having a bike go through the windscreen of a van time trials for racing bikes. I don't know what that is. It could be 140k. I don't know. These bikes are designed to go at speeds that you would never, ever, ever be allowed to travel in New Zealand. Never, never. Autobahn, uh, raceway, you just you can't do that, man. You just can't, like, it's just, yeah. I was quite sympathetic to him, and then, when I grew up a bit later, and I was just like, man, that is so fucking, that's culpable manslaughter, that really is, culpable homicide, I should say. Anyway, whatever, never mind about that, but, he and I were talking. Anyway, she was just, like, draping herself all over him like a cat and sort of eyeballing me, and it's just like, fucking sort it out, bitch, man. I'm not after you, man. I'm just having a fucking conversation with someone who's not fucking got his claws out for me. But anyway, she took me for a bit of a, tour through the house, and they had their bedroom in a different place because it was a 3-bedroom place, and it was quite a little place, but the way that my boyfriend and I had it is we had a boys' room and a girls' room. And then we had a bedroom which was just fucking sleeping. So the boys' room had his fucking clothes and all his shit, and the girls' room had my clothes and all my fucking shit. And so our bedroom was just for fucking sleeping. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. No, but genuinely, that's why we broke up. There wasn't enough nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Anyway, but she had, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, it turned out that she was a real HR Giga fan. Giga being, the guy who did the prototype of the alien, which people miscall the xenotype. Xenotype literally meaning, as I've gone on before, it just means foreign shape, which to bring into common parlance just means like an unfamiliar being, really. They weren't, the species is not called xenomorph. It was just what the crew of the Nostromo called it, because they didn't have another word for it. It's like Pakeha. It doesn't mean white person, it just means non-Maori, right? You just have to find something that just says to say this thing is different. We don't know what it is, we're just going to call it this. And all that, xenomorph is a descriptor rather than a term of identity. Anyway, whatever. So she was really into Giga, and my dad had been really into Giga, and I said, "Oh wow!" And she had all this fucking stuff, and I just said, "Oh wow, my dad was really into Giga," and she was like, "It's Geiger. It's called Geiger," and I'm like, "Oh fuck." Like, it's not Geiger, it's Giga, he's Swiss. And, yeah. And it's like, okay, so I'm not going to have a showdown with you about how to pronounce the name of this artist. It's not a big deal. But everything she did to me was just like, fucking, get your cock out, mate. Get your cock out. And I'm like, I'm really trying to avoid getting my cock out. And I'm quite glad I avoided getting my cock out, because a couple of months later, yeah, they grew a meth lab. But, yeah, anyway, if this was Sesame Street, lesson today is G for Giga, not Geiger, Giga, HR Giga. Okay.